Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Security Guide TV. It's episode 3044. My next guest, Mr. Ron Arden, the EVP, CTO, and COO at Fasoo.com, FASOO.com. Mr. Ron, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you very much.
It's not every day we get a trifecta like that, EVP, CTO, and COO. And as you and I both know, the CTO does all the work, not the CISO. The CISO is the magazine cover guy, but CTO is the guy behind the scenes. Am I right? Am I right about that? That's what happens.
Now, I plead the fifth.
Well, today's topic is maximizing data visibility with data security posture management. I love the word posture. I'm old enough to have had a posture class in grade school, and it meant something back then. And you know what? It means something today. It's the best word for IT and security management. We're going to talk about your integrated data-centric process and address today's challenges by maximizing data visibility. My first question is, what are the top security risks associated with unstructured data, and how does Fasoo help mitigate these risks?
So there are quite a few, but I think the biggest issue is it's growing like crazy. People don't know what they have, they don't know where it is, and they don't know who has access to it. So let's take a typical day in a life of business, right? You fire up your computer in the morning, you start creating a bunch of documents, you make a copy, you make a PDF, you email it to a couple people, you stick it in a cloud drive, somebody pulls it up on their phone. All of a sudden, I've got dozens of documents all over the place. I don't know what the level of sensitivity is. I don't know who has it. I don't know if I have any control over it. I don't know the visibility engaged in it. And so you just have kind of a mess. And I think of it like kudzu from the south, the weed that just keeps growing. And that's the biggest problem today with unstructured data. And this is the files and documents we work with every day. When you look at the world of structured data, databases, most of us have a pretty good handle on that because it's a set of locations that we understand. But with files and documents, they could go anywhere, and they do go anywhere. And then the issues you have is they get into unauthorized people's hands, they get into competitors' hands. There's a breach, in some kind of a cloud solution, and then all of a sudden you have IP theft, you've got reputational damage, you got privacy concerns, and the CEO is breathing down your neck because you're costing the company money.
Now, is your solution cloud-based, where the data is offloaded, or is it an open-prem application that's installed?
It can be either.
Okay.
Yeah. So let me differentiate a little bit. So we manage the security around the data, not necessarily the location of the data. So we're somewhat location agnostic. So if you use our solution and the primary functions are we're going to encrypt documents and we're going to apply a dynamic security policy to those documents, which govern what a user can do with those documents. So if you think of kind of phases of data, you have data at rest sitting on a hard drive somewhere. There's a lot of solutions that encrypt that. The problem is when you move it off that location and put it into another location, now that security vanishes and whatever security, if any, in the new location takes over. So that's a problem. And then when I move data around, we have SSL and all kinds of ways to address that. But when I open documents, I want to be able to control, can you view it? Can you edit it? Can you print it? Can you copy and paste it? And so that's what we are controlling. Where your documents live, they can live there, no problem. In the cloud, on your phone, on your desktop, we don't care about that. So the security part can be cloud-based. We could be SaaS, it could run in the private cloud, or it could be on-prem. We have a lot of customers who have air-gapped networks, and so they can't run anything in a cloud, and they do like the fact that we have the ability to run on-prem if that's a requirement.
Now, let's talk the landscape of unstructured data, how it's evolved in recent years, and what are the biggest challenges an organizations face in managing this, if they're aware of it, to your point? Because I think a lot of companies aren't aware of it.
I think that's part of the problem. So, people like the term ROT, redundant, obsolete, and trivial data. And some people also refer to dark data, which is I don't even know I have this stuff. So it could be internally, so like sitting in a file share. It could be also externally. Maybe somebody did a bunch of work with an S3 bucket in Amazon, and now I have a bunch of data out there. I don't even know what's out there. So that's probably the biggest problem. And then if we talk about data security posture management, what that has to do with is finding your data, understanding the level of sensitivity, and then doing something to control it. And again, in our case, it's encrypting the files, assigning access control, and the access control is dynamic in such that every time a user opens a document, they have to be authenticated. So it also meets the zero trust principles and least privilege type of principles. So those are the biggest problems right now is I don't know what I have and I don't know where it is. So we have ways to help you find it and determine the level of sensitivity. Then once you determine the level of sensitivity, if it's a kind of thing that you don't want to be out in the wild, and I try to bifurcate data, it's either public or it's not. So if it's public, you don't care. If it's not, and it could be anything, it could be PII, it could be intellectual property, whatever it is, you want to put some controls around it. And location-based controls, or what we call perimeter-based controls, which a lot of people have, that could be a firewall or a CASB or a lot of other systems, they tend to focus on where the documents are. But the problem with that, as I said earlier, is as soon as you move a document away from that location, you either have no security or you pick up the new location security. So this is kind of like playing whack-a-mole. A lot of people have, say, a DLP solution and it prevents things from going to a thumb drive. Well, what if I decide I'm going to upload it into Google Drive? Well, there's another rule and another rule and another rule, and it becomes impossible to manage all this stuff. So that's really what a lot of people have as issues. And in our case, if I encrypt the document, when we encrypt it, we assign what we call a persistent ID. And that persistent ID, you can think of it almost like a GPS tag. So wherever the document goes and whoever opens the document, I have some visibility and control over it. And I will actually have it calling back to what we call a policy server, which again can either be in the cloud or on-prem. And it's going to determine what permissions you have to the document at the moment. And it's dynamic in such that administrators or users could change those permissions as business dictates. So the other value of that persistent ID is the visibility it gives you. So again, regardless of where it is, that's part of the DSPM is give me visibility, data lineage. I need to understand where this document is, who's touched it, and also what are the current, let's say, formats of it. So, I have a Word document, I save it as a PDF, et cetera, et cetera. When users with the Fasoo solution do what I just described, they either make a copy or they make a derivative, like save it as a PDF, that tag, the persistent ID, goes with that derivative document, which means that the original security just automatically flows to all of these derivative documents. So the beauty of all that is I, as an end user, don't need to become a security expert. I just do my job, and this stuff just happens in the background. The lineage is there and the visibility is there. So if, a data privacy officer or the CISO or anybody in the organization needs to determine where this data is, who's last accessed it, that's very easy to do with inside a dashboard and inside logs. So I think that's some of the challenges that a lot of organizations are having today. With new regulations like GDPR and CCPA and all the other ones that are coming in the US and globally, organizations need to understand, for those purposes, privacy, and if somebody says, I need to understand all of the documents that Ron Arden is associated with, as an example, with this lineage that I talked about, we have a very simple way to do that.
So my background is law enforcement. That's where I started many, many years ago. And then I went to work for the studios, Fox, Disney. So I understood the importance of intellectual property protection, right? So your application certainly is super important for that. But I want to notch this up a little bit. I want to go off and say, let's say I'm a terrorist task force and I have some super duper secret squirrel information and I'm under regulations, right? Government regulations, I'm required to do certain things with that data. How does your solution help compliance, I guess is the best way to describe it?
Yeah, so with compliance, really compliance boils down to who has access to the document and what they can do with it. So if I'm going to comply with a particular regulation, I need to limit that access. So let me give you an example of, let's say, a bank. So within a bank, I have different operations, and there are only certain people that should be able to access certain documents. If I'm in the wealth management part of the business, only people in that department or a person that might be associated with a particular client should be able to see that particular document. So we have a couple of ways of doing this. All of our technology is policy driven, and anything can change, depending on the use cases. But let's say I have a policy that says anybody that's in the wealth management department, anytime they create a document that is sensitive, it automatically gets encrypted, and only people that are in the wealth management department have access to that file. So that's right there, a very simple way to guarantee that only the people who are authorized should have access to that document. Now, we have flexibility in that, let's say the department head decides, okay, I need a member of the legal group to be able to review something. So if the manager was given the permission to grant access rights to a particular document to the head of legal, they can do that. So what I've kind of described here is we have a centralized management where it's very simple for IT or security or a privacy person in the organization to set up a set of policies that just make it very simple as users create and work with documents to guarantee that only authorized users have access. And then if the files happen to get out, let's say somebody got into a ransomware situation, all the documents are encrypted. They're completely useless to anybody on the outside. And the other nice thing about some of the regulations is that they now stipulate if a piece of data is in a non-human readable form, i.e. it's encrypted, that does not constitute a data breach. So in fact, you don't even have to report that to either a government organization or to anybody that might be affected by that. So that's another value of that. It just drops the temperature immediately because legal doesn't have to get involved, and you don't have to worry about all the implications that you would have with a data breach.
Now, I love what I'm hearing. I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second. Encryption makes people nervous.
Yes.
Right? Very nervous.
Always.
Yeah, because, it's great when it's out in the wild and it's encrypted, but, what if I can't decrypt it myself because something goes kaboing? How do we address that? And I'll tell you a quick story. I encrypted all my CDs of all my Secret Squirrel investigations at the studios when I retired. Ron, I'm not kidding. I got a call 20 years later. Oh, we found these disks. We need to look up this whole case. What's the key? I don't know what the key is. I gave it to you guys 20 years ago. That was PGP back then. Now we're way past PGP, of course. Make people more comfortable with the idea of encryption, decryption, and redundancy and that kind of thing.
So if you think about the world you've just described, and I'll use an example that everybody will understand. If I open up Adobe Acrobat and I have a PDF and I want to protect it and I want to send it to you, so I could just say encrypt the document, I type in a password, I send it to you, and hopefully both of us remember the password. So that's the one you're talking about. If I forget the password, I'm kind of out of luck. Our system is far more sophisticated and a lot simpler. Since all of our technology is based on policies, and those policies are set in a central location, there is no way that you can orphan a particular file. So kind of under the covers, what's happening is we have a PKI infrastructure, just standard PKI, and it's a self-contained system, so nobody has to manage keys or worry about any of that. But the system automatically generates all of the appropriate certificates on the server side and on the client. And as users log in, there's an agent that facilitates all this at the endpoint. The agent communicates with the server, and all the certificate management is done in the background. And the way we do things is there's no way that one individual could potentially orphan a file. We do things where we set up what we refer to as a classification. It's really a protection policy. And even though I can set up policies to say, I'm only going to allow Ron or I'm only going to allow Chuck to have access to this, there is always a person that would be some type of an administrator that can change that policy. So there's really no way to orphan a file. And if you quote unquote lose the key because you don't have to remember a key, there's really nothing to lose. it's done policy-based and sort of in the background. So your issue of, if I had encrypted, all of your audio files with Fasoo, and now you want to recover them and decrypt them, no problem. You would just connect, open up your client. The client communicates to the server. You now have the rights to decrypt. You would right-click on a whole bunch of files and say decrypt, and now the documents are decrypted. So we're kind of taking away that fear by making it very, very easy to manage all of that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I may take you up on that, Ron. I'm approaching the low side of a terabyte of data. I've saved everything I've ever written since 1984. So I have a lot of stuff I've saved. And I don't know where any of it is except on a million disks.
Oh, yeah, I have a 4 terabyte external drive. That's where all my stuff is. So,
well, yeah, remember when iOmega came out with 1 gigabyte insertable hard drive? That was like, a gigabyte? What the heck? We're never going to get more than a gigabyte. It's unbelievable. Wow, how times have changed.
I had a PC that had a 50 megabyte SCSI drive, so I'll tell you how old I am.
My first hard drive was 2 floppies. That's how old I am. And I paid $1,250 for a 25 megabyte hard drive. And I thought I was in heaven.
Yes.
Unbelievable. Yep. Good times, Ron. Ron Arden, Executive VP, CTO, and CEO, Fasoo.com. I love the solution. Quick question. Is this a unique solution? I haven't heard it expressed this way. Are you kind of the person in this space, or one of the few people in this space doing this?
No, if we were the only one in the space, we wouldn't have a market. So no, we are not unique. We do have a number of competitors. We refer to the technology I've been talking about as enterprise digital rights management. You also might hear it as information rights management. So there's a number of competitors in the space. I think we do it in a better way. Some of the reasons for that are, we have a very, very, very broad support of document types. So most of what you think of your standard Office documents, images, videos. We're also supporting a lot of CAD applications. So a lot of manufacturing companies obviously have a lot of IP. We have very simple ways of integrating into information systems. It could be something common like a SharePoint or a Box, or it could be a homegrown type of a system. And the other things that I think differentiate us is, I was talking about this centralized management. So you have the ability to centrally control all of your policies, but you can delegate some of that authority down to the organization, to a department level or a division level or an individual level, to make it just easier, to control things. The other thing I think that we have that's fairly unique is we have a very robust exception management policy. And I don't care how good you are when you set up your security policy. We all know they have to change. Business conditions change, people move between departments, whatever the reason is. We have a very simple way for a user to request a change in policy. So it's all managed, by my manager could maybe give me the option of, let's say I want to print something and I never had the option to print, or maybe normally when I print certain sensitive documents, I put a watermark on it, but I can't do that because I have to print something and hand it to a customer. So all of these simple ways that users can just make requests for changes is what we call exception management. I think we're fairly unique in that. And the other thing I was mentioning about the integrations and the simplicity of use. So, we're always balancing our productivity versus security. The perfect secure system is one you can't use. So we try to balance that all the time. But I think our productivity, from what our customers have told us, it's very, very easy to use our systems. And I think that's why a lot of our customers come toward us.
Excellent stuff. Ron Arden, EVP, CTO, COO, Fasoo.com. Ron, I'm going to send you a Volkswriter file, which was out before Word came out, and see if we can encrypt and decrypt that file. That's all it is. All right, my friend, good luck. Come back and talk to us, pal. I'd like to hear some war stories, maybe some successful applications where you prevented something. Yeah, that'd be kind of interesting to talk about that. So good luck to you, my friend, and catch you at the next trade show.
Thank you very much. All right. Thank you, sir.